Hello,
Thank you,
everyone.
Dean.
Welcome to TAM Lab 73. Today, we're going to be covering vRealize operations and looking at using supermetrics and how to become a hero within your organization. We have our subject matter expert, Varghese, who is going to be covering this session in detail for you. And I'm going to stop sharing now and hand over.
Thank you, Dean. Good morning, good afternoon, all. My name is Verghese Philippos. I'm a staff TAM based in Dubai. My experience with VROps goes back to like 8 years since I joined VMware. It all started off with working with one of my big customers and their requirements, and then ultimately it ended up in like having a lot of uh, custom content in there, and then basically it resulted in like a lot of custom use cases, supermetrics, all of those things. That's where it started. And then currently now I manage a program within EMEA TAM community itself, like uh, helping to improve the adoption of uh, uh, VROps within the TAM customers. It's called Oversee. Most of you might have aware, or if not, it is under the umbrella of Quicksilver program. And then we have engaged with like at least about 150 plus customers within EMEA, and that's where all of these experts. So what I have done today is like, okay, let me just share my screen. So sorry for that interruption. So yeah, so the what I've done today is basically I've collected all of those experiences from the feedback from the customers, all the supermetric, specifically related to supermetric, the experience I've had with the customers all across EMEA mostly, and then converted that into like a stage one, like starting from a basic supermetrics onto going forward into a complex one. So I've got like 15 supermetrics, which I will take you through mostly. So I'll be switching on between slide just to show on with supermetric and then onto my lab as well. Okay, so let's get started. So this is the agenda. So very quickly, what is supermetric and then why you need it, and then we will go into the meat of the content, which is like starting from the very basic supermetric onto some of the complex use cases. And during the session itself, we will go through the demo and walkthrough of each of those things. And finally, we hope to have some time in the time for Q&A at the end as well. Meanwhile, if you have any queries, please put that in the chat. Dean will be looking and monitoring that, and then probably I will also take a pause in between, and then we can answer on to that. Okay, so just to start off with, like, I cannot go ahead without this slide, right? Without this screen. So our VROps. So the whole intention of this is to improve the adoption of the customer. So how do you see what we have seen from the field is that when customers starts using these products, using VROps, we get to know that like every release comes with a lot of new features, capabilities, but then every customer environment is different. So when they start using it's they will start coming up with a lot of custom use cases specific to their environment, and that's where it becomes important that we see the real adoption coming up. It's no more like reducing this shelfware. A deployment without being used is considered as shelfware. So that's where we treat it as real adoption. Real adoption means the customer starts using and then starts asking about the custom content. And TAMs are the best people who are like on day-to-day basis in connection with interacting with the customer, and that's where he could get the most help on that, right? So now custom content, it's a big word, right? So a lot of things are involved in that. You views, dashboards, metrics, supermetric, all of those things. So what is it and how do we use that effectively? So I have taken this one single slide from one of my last year's VMworld session, wherein I presented to TAM customers on what is the best approach of right or recommended approach of starting up with the custom use cases, right? So this is what I've summarized into, and I've put in few cases, the use cases against that as well. So first, you need to know the target audience where you are going to present this content into. Either it could be view, dashboard, or report. It could be management, technical, or anything. Then the mode of presentation, how you want to present, and then which object need to be referred to. But then the most important thing, the last not but the least, that is the most important thing. What is the information you need to publish, right? So That is what you need to figure out, whether it is metrics, properties, or supermetrics. Okay, so that's where today we are going to touch on with. So this is specifically taken from the, as I mentioned, taken from my VMworld session last year. So this is available for search in the YouTube. You can get to this for the whole session of that. Okay, so now let's get into supermetrics, right? So what is supermetric? So supermetric is nothing but just a mathematical formula which combines one or two or multiple metrics or between more objects, right? So that is basically like, if you are not able to get the full capability out of the metrics available out of the box, that's where you can think about combining different metrics. For example, very simple example, if you get to see the CPU usage in a host, or also CPU usage within the VM. So if you want to see an average of the CPU usage across the VMs on a specific host, that's where supermetric can help in. You can just run a mathematical formula of average into that and then get into that. So we will get more details into that. Now, before we start off with thinking about supermetric, so now you know when you need the supermetric, because when there is a specific metric which you are looking for is not available, you can look at thinking about adding that, or adding available metrics, combining that and building that into a supermetric. So before creating supermetric, there are a few checklists you need to look at, right? What are the things you need? Objects that are involved. So where are you taking those metrics from? Is it from virtual machine or any other object or anything? That is one thing that you need to be clear of. Then what are the metrics to be included in the supermetrics? You need to be aware. What are the metrics you need to go and pick up and then combine that, right? And then how to combine or compare them. So you can use different mathematical operators, functions to combine metrics. That's one thing which we'll see also. And then where to assign this supermetric into. Where to assign? Do you want to see the whole value of the total count of vCPUs in all the VMs across into the vSphere world? So you will apply to the vSphere world in that case. So we will see the examples and you will get to know on that. And then finally comes the policy to which you add the supermetric. This is very important because this is where you decide which all objects will get this supermetric applied. Okay, so this is the basic checklist, I will say, which you need to be aware before you start off even thinking about building a supermetric. Now, before we dive in deep, few basic things, right? So what does supermetric include, right? First thing, function. It's basically like how do you combine those metrics? Average, sum, count, max, min. I'll be taking you through most of these things. Then comes the operators, numeric operators as well as logical operators. So that mathematical plus, minus, multiplication, percentage, equal to, logical and, or, if, else, so many things are there. We'll get to see most of the most important things in there. And then comes depth. So this is something very specific. You need to be aware, because by default, when you put in a metric into a supermetric, it uses depth one. Depth one means it will be applicable, or you will get to see it from the object one level up. For example, you are creating a supermetric to count all the CPUs in a VM. If you are applying it one level up, which could be like a cluster, right? Or one level up could be host. So from the host, if you are using the default depth one, you will be able to get all the count of sum of all the vCPUs of the VM. But then if you try to look at that from the cluster, you will not get it, because that is 2 levels up. So that's where this depth is very important. So if you are not sure about whether you are going to apply it at cluster or data center or vSphere world, I will recommend it to keep it a bit higher, so that 6 to 8, so that you can easily apply it to any object and get to see that. That is not going to make any difference. Only thing is that those metrics will get enabled on those objects as well. That's it. So those are the 3 things which will need to be seen. So we will get to now specific use cases. So what I believe is, like, rather than talking about supermetric, how to build a supermetric, it is always good to, it is easy to go in with a specific use case and then see how it is being addressed with Supermetric in that, right? So that's what I've taken up. So I've taken like 15 use cases in that way, all from different customers at different levels. So starting off with the very basic thing, right? So let's see this use case. So VMware licensing dashboard. So this is, as a TAM, we get to get this asked from a lot of customers, right? A lot of customers we get to hear from this. Where can I see one single dashboard where I could see the available and used VMware licenses? When you say about VMware licenses, this customer was asking about vSphere, NSX, vSAN, vRealize, and Horizon. Thankfully, it was up to that only. So, and then he also want to see the licenses usage over last 6 months. Now, these are available in different portal, but then there is no single portal, single page where you can go in as of now. As of now, we don't have anything to track the available licenses and then the usage of that, right? So that's where we thought of, okay, the customer started asking, because he's having a separate tool, a third-party tool, wherein he's manually entering the available licenses. And then, so when VROps become mainstream in there, they started, why can't you have this? Because this is your own product, your own products. Why can't you track this? So that's where we thought of thinking of in a different way. So what we thought, like object, we need to see all the licenses usage from the vSphere world, because we don't want to segregate it to at least start off with out on the vCenter or specific object, but then vSphere world, right? So, and then metrics. What are the metrics, right? So if you look at this vSphere license usage, how do you count that? It's simple, like number of CPU sockets. vSAN license, again, number of CPU sockets filtered by vSAN host. So it was pretty simple, like vCenter licenses, we have the metric of vCenter instances within the VROps, right? And Horizon licenses, we can take it from the, if you have a management pack, you can see the concurrent users. So this is the usage. This is perfect. We can easily get that from VROps. But then the challenge what we are facing is licenses available. How can we put that into that same dashboard, right? Very simple. It could be a simple thing, but then you can see with these metrics, you can show the usages, but then not the available thing. So we thought of in a different way. These license values are mostly static values. They change just once in a year or maybe 3 years, depending on the yearly renewal, right? Not before 1 year, mostly in the case, right? So that's where we thought, like, okay, if it is static value for a year, we can definitely use a supermetric to put in a very simple static value. So create a supermetric, you can just add a static value to that, and that will just become a metric, and that can be a vSphere licenses, right? So this is what we did, and how we will now go into my demo lab. So we will be doing this switching quite a bit. So please be patient with that. Okay. Okay, so that's my lab. I'm just going to show you how it was created, right? So, okay, so going into supermetric, for those who are not aware, it's under configuration, supermetric, and then this is where you get to add, right? So what we are now going to add is the most simplest of the supermetric, just to give a static value for a metric, right? So I'm going to say count of vRealize licenses, vRealize suite licenses. It's recommended to keep in description as well, because as and when you start building too many things, it can get complicated, right? So, and then unit, there is a built-in available one, but then currently there is no CPU available. This is going to come up in the next release, but then, yeah, this is hopefully we are going to see that in the next release. So we got to see next. This is where you put in the formulas or whatever the operators mentioned and all of those things. So here, I'm just going to put in just the value. So my vRealize suite licenses, I'm going to put as 60. That's it, right? And then once you have that that value in there, this is the most simplest supermetric you can create. I can just preview it at any object level. This is just previewing. You are not applied the supermetric, but then I can just preview it here itself. See, I can see that value of that supermetric is 60 all through the day. And then I'll just say next. I need to apply it to an object. That's the other thing which we mentioned. So I'm going to apply it to vSphere bulb because this is where I want to see all the licenses coming in there. And then comes the policy. So I'll apply the policy, and that's it. So if you have used supermetrics like 3 releases before, you would see that this is so easy now. It's all happened in one single wizard, right? Earlier it used to be like you create the supermetric, go into the policy, and enable that add. So now it has become like all so simple into one single wizard. So now what we have done is like we have created that supermetric. Let's see where it has ended up, right? So I can go into the environment, vSphere host, vSphere world, metrics, and then under all metrics, you will see supermetrics. Okay, so that metric will not come easily because it takes like 1 to 2 collection cycles. That means 5 to 10 minutes it takes to get in under the supermetric. So, but before that itself, we can go into the supermetric previews. This is the button. This is by default off. So this button enables the supermetric previews as well. So even if you have enabled that, you can immediately come in and see here, right? So if you see here now, it is not there. I'm just going to enable supermetric previews, so I can see it here, right? So what I did is I have created this was the one which I created, count of vRealize licenses. So this is not yet applied, but then it is in the process, but then I can just still see the preview of what is the value and all of those things coming into picture. Okay, so similarly, I can create for vSphere all of those things. I'll just take you to the dashboard. This is the dashboard which it ended up with. All of this on the top are supermetrics. I've created this. These are static values. Whenever they buy new license or something, they just need to go into the supermetric and edit those values. But then this is all the licenses which they have. I can add as many boxes as needed as new product come in. And then this is the licenses usage. This is dynamic. This comes in from VROps. For example, vSphere CPU, we saw that we are looking at the CPU, and then vCenter, we said it is using the vCenter instances metric, vSAN, NSX, all of those things. So what they see, and I've also color coded that in such a way that like if it goes beyond this number, available number, it turns to red. So this is one of the very, very basic examples of how supermetric can be useful. Okay, so let's go into the next one. Any questions? Please do free put in the chat, please. Okay, so as far as no questions are there, I'm just going further ahead into the next use case. Okay, so the next thing is proactive monitoring for performance, right? So this is a common thing, mostly a common thing which comes in, right? So the IT admin or the admin infra admin teams need to monitor critical workloads, and what they normally do is they put critical workloads into specific custom group, so that can be monitored by a specific team or themselves itself, and then give it to the application owners or whatever. So now one of the key things which come up is want to see the maximum CPU ready within a custom group of VM. So it is not about like averaging or summing of all the CPU ready within the VM, but then maximum value. So I want to see what is the maximum value of CPU ready faced by any of those VM, because that's an indication for me to look at the infrastructure, right, on the host, how it is performing, is there any contention happening and all. Same thing goes for memory ballooning. So if I get to see that maximum value at every 5 minutes, this is really helpful for me. So that's what I'm going to do, right? So now if you look at the custom group, okay, now the object what we want to see here is custom group cluster compute resource, because these are the two objects where I'm going to see all the VMs and then look at what is the maximum value coming in. And then the metrics, we almost saw that, like find the maximum value of CPU ready and memory balloon among virtual machines in a custom group, and that too group for a application monitoring group. So this would mean that you have an application group called application one, and then there are a set of VMs in there, and then I'm going to find what is the maximum value of CPU ready and memory ballooning at any point of time. So as a infrastructure admin, I want to see it on the cluster level as well, not just on the application level, on the cluster level as well. So that's the next demo we are going to see. I'm going to switch in again back into my lab. Okay, so we'll go into the next one. Sorry. Okay, so this supermetric will use a function of max. It's looking at the maximum value of a specific metric within an object, right? So of an object. So here we are going to look at a specific application group called application one, which I've already created. Hopefully it should be here. Yeah, application one, it has about like 51 virtual machines, and so it's a function. So I want to find the maximum CPU ready and memory balloon time. So let's go into the supermetric. As usual, just go into supermetric, just going to add, and I'm going to say max CPU ready percentage, max CPU ready percentage. Just going to use the description same. And then this is a unit which you can assign it to. Normally, earlier we never used to have an option to put in a unit to a supermetric, but then now we have options available. Since it's going to be percentage, it's readily available, so we can use that. Let's go next. So now you will see in the workspace, in the formula workspace, you have two options. One is the modern one, I would say, similar to like UI base, and then another one is the legacy base. So some of the advanced formulas, for example, where parameters and all of those things are readily not available on the new UI format. So there you will have to use the legacy as well. But here it is simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add that, right? So maximum value of CPU ready within a VM. So that's what we are going to do. So I've set function as max, and then I can just type in virtual machine here so that it gives me the option of all of those things, right? Virtual machine. Now you can look at the metric. So CPU ready, right? I'm going to look at CPU ready, metric, CPU ready. Now you see the depth here. This is very important when you are building a supermetric, especially of this case, because you are going to count, look at the maximum CPU ready. And if you are looking at this from the application folder or the custom group, one should be okay. But then if you are going further ahead, cluster and all, you need to have depth too in there. So as I mentioned, to be on the safer side, if I want to extend this to be looked at from the vSphere world itself, I usually add it like 8. This is my way of doing it, so that it always have the option available. The only thing here is that it is going to add this supermetric to each of those objects available if the policy is applied. That's the only thing. But then as far as it's a smaller environment, it's not a thing. So now I have this maximum CPU ready PEP4. Now I can do a preview here. So let's look at application one. That is a function. Okay, so now you can see this, right? So this is the values. Highest was 15.03, and it is starting. It works. It picks up it calculates the value every 5 minutes as we are upstairs. So this is max CPU ready, depth 8, and this is how the preview it looks like. Even you can look at even the cluster resource as well. Any specific cluster. Let's go at that. Hope this cluster is working. Yeah, this is stable. This is 0.13 is the maximum CPU ready within that, right? So So we have the formula ready. So now let's go further ahead. I'm just going to apply this to custom group now. Container, I will say function, next, and then, yeah, I've got quite a lot of policies here. So apply it to the policy, and that's it. That's done, right? Similarly, you can do the same for, instead of CPU ready, you can use the memory balloon as well. So that will give you the maximum value, maximum CPU ready memory balloon value in there, which you can take it into a dashboard or a report or any heat map or anything. It's just like any other metric. So let's go in and see the metric in there again. Yeah, custom application. If you see here, you will not see supermetric here because we just applied it, right? So I'm just going to do the preview part, and it says, yeah, yep, it shows me the historical values as well. But then once the supermetric is deployed, it will start calculating from the time it starts it's deployed. So now this is like a simulation of that value for the previous time as well. Okay, so we are short of time, so I'm just going to go quickly over to the other sections. Let's go further. Okay, so let's look at the next one. So monitoring dashboard for the application team. This is again one of the same thing, right? So capacity and performance. We saw the max CPU value, max memory balloon value. Same thing happens here as well. So once you group a VMs into an application for an application folder, for example, SQL Server, you move all the VMs, logically group all of those VMs into that group. What you will see is that you will get to see all the VMs in there, but then you will not, within that group, if you look at that group, you will not see the virtual machines specific metrics. This is because it's a container, right? It has the metrics of that container. So if the application owner asks you what is the total number of vCPUs provisioned across this application group, you will have to create a supermetric, just because you have the data. VROps has that data because all the virtual machines inside that has the vCPU count, right? So you can use a sum as the function or operator to add all the CPUs into that and then put that up as a supermetric in there. So just we'll quickly show that as well. Okay, so same for the same thing, we'll go into the supermetrics, configuration, supermetrics. I'll say total count of vCPU count. We don't have a valid metric there, so I'll just use sum and then virtual machine CPU. I can look at the CPU provisioned value, CPU provisioned vCPUs. So this is for one single, and then we will do the summation of that. Again, depth, I'll take it a longer one so that it is available. So now I can do a preview on this. Let me see if we can do this on PC World itself. Yeah, it will be a too big thing, but then yeah, the actual use case comes in and from the containers. Yeah, so this is 1900 application one.
You finished this, just going through this bit of the demo. We've just got 2 questions that I'd like to answer live if possible.
Yep, sure.
Fantastic.
Sure. Yeah, so I've selected that group, and then you got the 129 as the value of, that is the sum of all the vCPUs of VMs within that container. Okay. So that's how you do the summation and then put those metrics which are readily not available in a group. Okay, so let me, before going into that, let me just look at the question.
Yeah, so I can read out the first question for the recording. So it's from Stephen. Hi, Varghese. Any other performance metrics you would add to the super metric to get insights into performance besides max CPU ready and memory balloon? Maybe something along the lines of disk and network metrics?
Yeah, that's a good question, Steve. What I was trying to show was like the operators, like so. It is not the actual final solution for that specific requirement, right? I just picked up that operator and showed. So of course, for the performance, yes, you can add all of those things. You can combine those things. So I have I think the next one is on combining these multiple metrics and then showing with and or something like that. So I'll get to get that as well.
And the second question, I think, is from Mukund, and apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. Can I have supermetrics to extract the number of times the CPU or memory utilization for an ESXi host has exceeded a given threshold over a period of time?
Okay, so that's a bit tricky because what supermetric does is it just does the mathematical calculation of what we ask them to do, right? So now we are talking about whether how it has breached the threshold. So you have set a threshold and how many times it has breached the threshold, right? We can do it in we can do a workaround for that by creating a supermetric first to see that if it goes beyond the threshold, give a value of 1 or 0, okay, and then if it is below the threshold, it will remain the other value 0, and then we can use another supermetric to count these values, switching of 1 and 0. So that's how we can do that. Yeah, this is it is not simple. It's like a few customers have asked about this, switching or counting the number of time it has reached in there. Just a superfederic could be defined at federation instance to concentrate values of all VROps instance. Yes, this can be this is possible. So all the metrics we can just add into that and put it into that. It is basically like a management pack there, right? So you can count it into that as well.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
everyone for the questions. Varghese,
Okay.
please continue.
Okay. So I'll just go a bit quickly. We are I think we are a little bit behind on this. Okay. So next use case is the total reclaimable resource for management to view it. So total reclaimable resource, what we see is basically in the VROps, what we see is we have two things, right? One is the reclaimable wastage coming from idle VM, powered off VM, snapshots, and these are from the VMs, right? And then the other thing is oversized VM. This we don't consider into optimizing the capacity now. We consider that into optimizing the performance, right? So, but then for the management, it is basically like that's again a saving, right? I'm going to right size the VM, that is going to come in. So these are two different things. So what we have done is like when such a request came in, the issue was, I'll show you what it is. So these are the metrics available at the cluster compute level. You have the reclaimable resources from idle VM, powered off VM, and VM snapshot, but then not on the oversize, right? And then at the vCenter level, you don't have any of those. And at the vSphere world, you just have reclaimable capacity available, of the reclaimable capacity of the disk space available. So you have something available at the VM level and then at the cluster level, and not much on the vCenter and vSphere world. So this is good for seeing the reclaimable race from a specific cluster, because that is how it is meant to be, because two different clusters would be at different tiers. So we don't want to mix that. But then some customers want to see it all as a one single value, right? So that's where we can add them together. We can add them together in a supermetric. So this is how we do that. Total reclaimable vCPU, we can take the reclaimable vCPU from idle VMs and then add it with reclaimable vCPU from oversized VM. This is very simple supermetric. You just need to pick up those metric and then add that, use the operator add. And then for the memory also, you do the same. The only thing is that if you want the memory metric is in KBs. So we just need to convert that into GB. So that is basically like divided by 1024 into 1024, that gives you in GB. Same goes for the TB as well on the reclaimable disk, because reclaimable disk comes in GB. So that becomes a very big value when you are looking at the big environment, right? So that definitely you can again use mathematical equation in converting that into TB. So I will not go into this because this is just like what we have done. It is just a mathematical calculation. We will go into the advanced ones. Okay, so next one other thing is SLA metrics for infrastructure team. So infra team want to know what percentage of their VMs have CPU ready percentage above 1%. So 1% is something which they have kept as, okay, this is good, this is okay. But then want to also see how many VMs, or not just the number, but percentage of the VM are having CPU ready above 1%, right? So what you need to do is first identify the count of VM having CPU ready person above 1%, and then once you have that count of VMs which are having CPU ready above 1%, you can just divide it by the total number of VMs, right? You already know what is the total number of VMs. So that's how that supermetric will work in, right? I will just show you this particular thing, because this is a good way of going into the most complicated things, right? Let's quickly go into that. Okay, so here you can see there is a where clause in here. So I'm going to say I want to count all the virtual machines which are having CPU ready above 1%. Okay, where my CPU ready is all 1%. That is a clause we are putting in there, where clause, and then we divide it by the total number of VM. So let me just show you how we can do that. I'm just going to do this. VM with CPU ready above 1%. Okay, so again, this is a percentage, so we can use the built-in metric there. So next, so here I will not use this workspace, because there is a where clause in here, and it is recommended in the current version also to use for whenever there is the advanced where combinations and all. It's recommended to use the still the legacy mode. So how you can use is, first is you can use the count. You have the function here, you can just use that, or you can type it in there, and then comes you need to pick up that metric, right? The CPU ready. First we need to see what is the CPU ready value in there. So I'm just going to use this. This is the manual way of doing it when it comes into the advanced configurations. CPU virtual machine, and then I'll pick up that CPU, and I'll get CPU ready percentage. Okay, so this is the value which you have. Again, you see the depth here. So I'm just going to increase to 8 so that I can use it further ahead. Now, this is the metric which came in, but then we don't want all of those, right? We just want to say the value when it is above 1%. So that is where equal and then 1. Okay, so this is one metric, and I will count this. So the meaning of this is that I'm going to count the virtual machine with all the virtual machine with CPU ready percentage greater than sorry, it is not equal, it will be greater than. It is, I just missed that, greater than, yeah, where it is greater than 1. So this is 1, and now we get the number, right? So now we need to divide it by the number of running VMs so in the cluster. So I will say that is the divide, and then I can again go into the cluster compute resource, and then I'll go into summary, number of running VMs. Okay, so I don't need to pick this because I have already have the resource there. So I'm just going to put it as this. This is the way of doing it. And again, depth is also not needed because we have already mentioned depth there. Okay, so now this is the metric which brings in the total number of running VMs. So, and then, So what I have here is the count of VMs with more than one person, and then divided by the running VM. And to make it into percentage, I need to multiply it by 100. Okay, so this is it. So let's see, and you click here, it should bring in the formula. So this is, so if you have any mistake in whatever you have written in there, it will give the message here. It will not pick this up. So now you can see it in the UI mode, right? Count of virtual machine with CPU ready with depth 8 were greater than 1, and this divided by number of summary VM. And then now let's go and preview this. Like I'm going to say vSphere World.
So in a second, Varghese, we've just got 2 questions to review as well that I'll read out for you when you're ready.
Yep. Yeah. So this is how the value comes in. You can see here, right? So this is the so same thing goes for any container as well. Yeah, so this doesn't have any VMs in there. Yeah, so simply in short, that's how the longer calculation or longer formula is being calculated. Yes, Dean.
Yeah. So just I'll ask the questions in reverse, just because the first one relates more so to what you've shown on screen. Why
Okay.
David asks, why are you using count as the function and not sum?
Okay, so where was that? Let me just get. Okay, so sum is basically like it is going to add up all the values of that metric, right? Now I don't need the value, count the values, right? I just want to count the number of virtual machines which are having ready as one person. So when I put sum, that is going to add up all the result of that that metric. So if it is 1%, 2%, it is going to add those percentage and give you that value, which is not what we want. We just want to count the instance of VMs. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Chiranjoy asks, under this SLA, how do we get to know about the VM and host availability percent for the last 30 days?
Yeah, so once we have the metric, supermetric enabled, so availability is always complicated stuff. I have one in the last, hope we will be able to get to there. It is a very long supermetric. So I think I will take this point there because that is covered in there as well. That is the VM availability, but then it's the same thing, same applicable to the host availability as well.
No problem,
Okay.
Varghese. Please continue with your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's go into, yeah, so we get to the advanced ones. So these were the basic ones, we can say, with the basic formulas and all. Next comes in the where clause, where you can like put in like multiple clauses in there, right? So one of the thing is find the count of VMs whose CPU usage is greater than 60. This is more or less similar to what we did now, like, right? Counting the number of VMs with more than CPU, 1% CPU. This is more or less the same, but then this is a very, very regular common ask which I get from a lot of customers. I want to count the number of VMs with having so and so CPU, and also find the count of VM with Windows operating system. I just put that Windows operating system as a very common thing, but then I can list down like Red Hat, Windows 2012, Windows 2016, whatever. So if you see the formula here, um, right, where it is just talking about, it looks at the metric of the guest's full name, and then it is saying, giving a value here that starts with Microsoft Windows. I can just specifically say contains 2012, contains Microsoft 2016, something like that. So starts with and contains is another function operator which we can use in this scenario. So this is this metric is supermetric is readily available in code.vmware.com for all the operating system. I would suggest you can have a look at that as well. Now this is the basic one from the where clause. So I will not go into that. I will, because we are short of time. Now this is a bit more. One more condition I added to that. Like for example, I want to find the count of VM where CPU usage is greater than 60 or memory usage is greater than 60. This also comes up very frequently. You can either do or and or just or with that. So you can say, you can just simply say that, right? So the depth is always to get it from the top of the thing, but then where value is greater than 60, this is the or operator, the two lines, right? So that is the or operator, or then it looks at the memory usage, which is greater than 60. So it will again count those VMs which are having CPU usage either greater than 60 or memory usage greater than 60. Same thing going in for the operating system. I can add another operator to another clause to that. Count of VM with specific operating system and powered on, right? You can segregate this in a custom group. Always this is possible even without supermetric. But the problem there is that as far as you have 10 operating system and then 10 powered on, powered off, you need to have 10 groups into 2. That is 20 groups. So supermetrics gives you that easy, flexible way of doing that with just one metric. You can apply it to all the other objects. Okay, so this is one of the advanced things which came in there. I will go into demo altogether with that. Now there are few other things which came up, right? So if or else. So this is another conditional expression. So this is not a very common use case, but then really I want to tell this because this is where I specifically use very simply the if else. So infra team wants to get alert when a count of VM is CPU is changed to a specific value of example 4. So they have specific group of VMs with vCPU assigned as 4. And this is a telco structure, so it comes under the VCD. So it is not straightforward that they can get alerted and all. That's a different thing. But then they just want to see in the VROps side. So as you know, alert can be triggered by a threshold only, right? So when it changes from 4 to changes the value from 4, you cannot trigger an alert. So that's where we can create a supermetric saying, check the count of vCPUs first. It will look for the count of vCPUs, and then you put in the if else value. So this question mark is if, and then this is else. So which means I'm saying the provision vCPU is if the value is equal to 4. If it is equal to 4, it returns a value 1. If not, that is this column, then it returns a value 0. So my whole objective is to have a supermetric which has two values, 1 or 0. 1 means it is having vCPU 4. 0 means it is not 4. Now, what is the importance of this? I can use this supermetric to create a trigger for an alert. So if it changes to 0, which is easy to do, right? I can create a symptom definition, easy to trigger that, and then generate an alert about that. Okay, so that is if else. Dean, please just check if any questions are there. I'm just going forward just because of the.
Prem asked just if you could see slide 26 again, please.
26. Oh, 26 was this.
Okay. Prem, was there a question in particular that you wanted to ask? You can unmute yourself if you want. I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. Okay, Varghese, please continue. We've got about 5 minutes left of the session. If there's any other questions that anyone wants to ask live, Varghese, we can continue after the top of the hour to continue the recording as well, so that's fine.
Sure. Okay, so the other condition of conditional expression of if else, this is very, very commonly used. I have got so many customers using this. Okay, so now rightsizing is very important within VROps, right? So now what VROps provides recommendation is how much CPU you can remove or how much CPU you need to add. So that is what you talk about. So recommended CPU to be added or removed. But then that is good for a admin team, right? IT admin team or infra admin team. They know how much can be removed, how much need to be added. But then for an executive or for a management level, we got an ask saying that I don't want to see that. I want to see what would be my end size of the VM. So which is ideally the provisioned vCPU minus what is recommended to remove. So that is what they wanted, right? Which is not readily available in that. So this is the screen what we get to see. On the oversized VM, we get to see recommended CPU reduction. And then for undersized VM, we said recommended CPU increase. So this is good. This is good. But then for the specific ask, they were talking about they want to see that. So how do you achieve that, right? So this is possible, but then it needs a longer supermetric, longer expression to be written onto that. In simple English, if you say in that logical calculation, we will first look if what is the value of recommended vCPUs to add. There is a metric called recommended vCPUs to add. If it is equal to 0, that would mean that it is not an undersized VM, right? It is not an undersized VM because there is no recommendation for vCPUs to add. So it is not so then in that case, we will create this supermetric, actual recommended vCPU, as provision vCPU minus the recommended vCPUs to remove, because there is nothing to add. So it could be that there is something in the remove option, right? So which is as an oversized VM. There could be chance that there is no recommendation on the removal as well. In that case, it will be a 0 value and it will come up with the same provision vCPU. So it will be exactly the same. And if the recommended vCPU to add is not equal to 0, then that means it is an undersized VM. So then it actually takes provision vCPUs plus recommended vCPUs to add, and then that is how it look in there. Okay, this is very, very commonly used for the management dashboards, just to give that value of showcasing into there. Okay, I will go through this and then finally go into the demo slide so that we can have some time in covering all of those things, right? So, and then those were not really complex. So availability part, right? So I started working with, VROps at that time. There were not much support, a lot of documents available on Supermetric. That there is one person, you all know, Ivan Rabuk. So he's currently the PM. So he's a master in Supermetric. So I got to learn a lot from him, and that's where it started, right? And VM availability is very, very difficult to calculate, because how do you calculate VM availability if you have so many things, right? CPU, disk, memory, and you have to look at each and every metric and then see what is it remaining. So he came up with this value, this formula. This is for VM availability. This is published in his blog article itself, right? So same thing goes for the host also. The only thing different would be the heartbeat metric will be removed. Other than that, it will be used. So this is used by several customers. Now, if you think this is complex, I've got another request from similar request, but then they want to have this VM availability. But then the only thing they want to add is like when there is a host maintenance happening. So the host will be going down. So they don't want to count that as a downtime for those hosts, so that their SLAs are not impacted, right? So when a host goes on for the maintenance, they want to take it into the maintenance mode in the VROps also, so that it gets a property get attached to that, and then that will be taken off from the calculation. So that's what we have seen here, right? And that's what I've written here. So it looks at the custom property. If the maintenance state is equal to in maintenance, then it should automatically give 100 value. There is nothing on that, right? Everything is fine. It will not reduce the availability of the overall cluster. So these are not very widely used. What I'm saying is like these are the things really which we can use or think about. Just don't stop seeing that there are metrics not available in VROps, and so you cannot. I cannot achieve that use case. Please don't do that. Just think about that. Reach out to any of us. There could be a way. There could be a way like to combine or do a workaround or do these kind of calculations. These doesn't happen every day, but then these are some things which happen up at right. Sorry, someone was asking.
We have a quick question from Richard. Can supermetrics be used to influence DRS behavior? So I think this is when you link VROPs to provide information to DRS.
Not really, because DRS uses its own metrics, right? It doesn't look at supermetrics. Supermetrics is something which we create for our own purpose. DRS doesn't use that at all. DRS has its own metrics with its calculate for their DRS functionalities. No, we won't. Okay, so there can be some use cases which are weird also, like not, it doesn't come from a lot of customers, but then this is one of the use cases which came in very recently. So infra admin team wants to monitor VM reports which are being managed by the managed services team. So they need to be alerted when a VM has VM tools running, but the uptime is less than 5 minutes, which means uptime is less than 5 minutes means there was a reboot, right? But then the VM tools is running. So they just want to validate whether that there was an approval on that reboot and all. So this is a bit tricky, because what you need to do is basically, if you see the formula, and what it does is it checks the VM tools running status. If the status of VM tools is not running, I'm saying not running. So you will see two not here. This exclamation is not, and then again the not running is the value. So the VM tools running status has multiple things, either not running, unavailable, and running, or unknown. So if it is anything other than not running, that's when it looks at, right? So then provide output as the VM uptime. So then it will definitely straight away give the VM uptime. That metric is already there. Otherwise, it will just return a value of 0. If it is not running, it will just return a value of 0. And then what they get is the VM uptime or 0. So if the VM uptime is less than 300, they create generate an alert. So that is what they do. So that means they will get to see, get an alert when a VM is rebooted or anything which comes in within the 5 minutes. And that is achieved with this formula, right? It has a lot of couple of wheres, ands, and then what if else, all of those things are there, but then it works perfectly, and they could achieve all their use cases with that. Okay, so the 15th one, this is my oldest one. I think I built this like 4 years back. That is all related to sustainability with one of my customers. So what they wanted was they're big on sustainability. They want to show that IT is also helping sustainable to save carbon emissions and all of those things, right? And with virtualization, we definitely help. So by virtualizing the the workloads, they are saving on carbon emission and then helping IT, right? Helping to achieve sustainability. But then we don't have any tools which is showing how much you saved on sustainability, right? How much you saved on carbon emission. So we just took a very, very simple way of doing that. So power consumption after virtualization, we have a metric from vRops. But then power consumption, if those workloads were not virtualized, I would take it as like, if there are 100 VMs now virtualized, if this was not virtualized, it would have been 100 physical servers running there. Not big and high-end servers, but then average servers. So what we did was average power consumption or a mid-range server we took, and then multiplied it with number of VMs. So this would have been the power consumption if they are not virtualized, right? And then we created the supermetric out of it, and then calculated a power saving out of that with all the calculations we got in the supermetric. And then there were like, I think 11 or 12 supermetric to achieve all of those things. And finally what we got was this. So first thing, and by the way, this is a very, very old dashboard, 4-year-old dashboard. Yeah, so on the left-hand side, you will see calculating the power consumption if not virtualized. This is basically looking at the average value of the mid-range servers equivalent to number of VM. And then you have the current power consumption now. And then from that, you can see the power saving. And then with that, you get to see the money saved as well. And this is the most recent it is not out of the box still. We are hoping it to come in very soon, but then this is a sustainability dashboard which we can very well use with our customers. It shows the energy saving, power consumption, carbon emission reduction, all of those things. And it has all of these, it has quite a few supermetric to get it achieved. And this is published in one of the blogs, sustainability dashboard in vRops. And also we have a sustainability solution data sheet available in wall page. So I will send you the link for these. So these dashboards are readily available there. You can use that with your customers as well. Okay, so In summary, Supermetric definitely broaden the use cases that can be addressed with vRops. So we have so many use cases which can be addressed with vRop with Supermetric. So make powerful vRops powerful. Not just do not just rely on out of the box metrics, right? You can just look at what is possible in there and then look on with that. So and then supermetrics are just mathematical expression. It depends how simple or complex depending on the use cases, right? So it can be very, very simple. You have seen that. It can be just one mathematical or addition or subtraction or just a static value, or it can be really complicated. But then yeah, it helps you to achieve quite a lot of things. What I would suggest is, please don't stop saying like just looking at the metrics, and if you don't find something, that don't stop there. Just reach out to any of those people who are really doing on supermetric. You can always reach out to me. I can guide you, I can help you with things. I'm not saying that I'm an expert, but then at least I can guide you with something, get you connected with someone, and then see if it is achievable first. That's the first primary thing, whether we can achieve it or not. That's first thing, and then if it is achievable, then definitely we can do that. We are doing quite a lot of complicated things which is helping customers to achieve their goals, right? Okay, so that's I'm over the time, but still, yeah, I'm happy that I was able to complete this thing. Dean.
Yeah, thank you, Varghese. Very, very insightful and always a lot of information to capture in VROPS. We've got a question from Sasha. Is it possible to trigger a script from a Supermetrics? For example, if VMware Tools was unavailable for 5 minutes, then trigger a script to reboot that particular virtual machine?
No, there is no. We cannot do an action direct from a supermetric. But then what I can do is I can just generate a value if the VMware tools are unavailable for 5 minutes. Then what I can do is I can trigger a value in supermetric, and then with that value I can create a alert, trigger an alert, and that alert can be put in with an action attached to that, which can send in the script. It's always possible, but then yeah, it's not that you can run a script directly from supermetric. It is not meant for that. Supermetric is meant for calculating things in there.
No problem. I noticed during just towards the end session there, Richard unmuted himself. So, Richard, if you do have a question you'd like to ask live, please unmute yourself again and you can ask that. Oh, no, he doesn't. It's just messaged in the chat. And then finally, from Luke, the formulas are a great value for the customers. Will these formulas be shared in text anywhere?
Yeah, I'll share this. These are the ones which I had worked with the customers. For sure, I can share this. These are nothing proprietary.
Okay.
These have been done for our customers itself, so we can always share this.
Yeah, maybe if we get these captured in a blog post, Varghese, then what we can do is, for anyone watching the recording when it hits YouTube, then we'll also put the blog post article into the description on YouTube as well.
Sure.
Okay, everyone. So it's for those of you that have stayed on the call past the hour, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. If there's any last questions or queries, we'll give you roughly around 20 25 seconds to unmute yourself and ask them, or put them into the chat or the Q&A. Other than that, thank you everyone again for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.